yours, is it saying it's live now?
Yes. Over 9,000. Yeah, 900.
Okay, so we're live on YouTube now.
Thank you, Hannah. Right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Planning Advisory Committee's meeting of the 16th of September 2021. As ever, we want to make our council and committee meetings available to as many people as possible, regardless of where they are, virtually or here in person. We're still getting used to having meetings in this way, both in person and zooming in. So please feel it feels a bit crunchy at times, especially this evening, because this is a new setup that we have. The hybrid meetings will technically be informal because the government has not brought forward legislation to enable us to continue to operate virtually. But we will run them as if they were formal. They've been advertised, and as you can see, we still have agendas, reports, discussions, and votes, and minutes will be taken. Legally, only councillors present in person will be able to vote, which is a bit exclusive and unsatisfactory. So to ensure all councillors can vote, at the council meeting on the 14th of July, we agreed to delegate to the planning manager, Jane Llewellyn, to carry out informal decisions made by councillors tonight. Otherwise, we'll be running the meeting in the usual way, with everybody chipping in as usual. Thank you very much. So, item number 1 on the agenda: questions, comments, information from the public or councillors. We have no attendees. Any comments questions from councillors? No? Excellent. All right. Item number 2 on the agenda: apologies for absence and declarations of members' interest. Do you have any apologies for absence? Paul?
I need to declare an interest. I've got a planning application in this week. Number 663 is one of mine.
Great, thank you, Paul. Any other declarations of interest? Excellent. No. Item number 3 on the agenda: to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of August 2001. I have the full copy here. Take everyone's read them. Is there any questions on any comments on the minutes?
I think
Okay. In which case, if I could get someone to propose them, please. Thank you, Mark, and someone to second. Thank you, Sheila, and all those in favour.
that's unanimous.
Great. Thank you very much. Excellent. And item number 4: to consider the major planning applications received in Appendix 1. And at that point, over to you, Jane.
Thank you very much. So we're going to start with number 659 on our list, which is land at Hedgerow through. And it's for the erection of 24 passive house dwellings with associated parking and landscaping, along with the rearrangement of parking provision for cherry trees.
Which is just coming.
I'll just
share my screen so I can show you the layout. I know all councillors have looked at the plans and they've got questions. There we go. So you'll recall that we previously seen this application first in 2019, and at that point in time we objected to the application. We did recognise the need for additional assisted living accommodation. I think now the other applications that are houses that you can see that are greyed out have received approval for the assisted living units. We also objected about the fact that this, we felt the land formed part of Marston Trading Estate based on a previous allocation from the local plan. However, through the local plan part 2 process, that was removed from the employment allocation. And we were also concerned about the noise impact assessment, which acknowledged an unacceptable noise impact on social hours, and that would have perhaps a detrimental and unacceptable impact on the adjoining business and employment land. Revised plans were then submitted, and again, we objected on the basis that it didn't overcome our previous objections, and we went on to make some further comments about the removal of landscaping and replacement with plant parking, which would result in a net loss of biodiversity. Again, the increased noise impact from the adjoining industrial estate, and again, the acoustic report pointed out that all but 4 properties would require windows that couldn't be openable, but should normally be closed to control external noise. And it seemed that at that point, the Environmental Protection Officer's comments backed that up. And that, on that basis, a refusal was issued. And the 2 main reasons being the noise issues and the fact that they didn't feel that acceptable noise mitigation was in place. So now we have this scheme in front of us, and as I say, I know that you've all looked at the plans, and we do have Sean Chavez with us here from Boone Brown Architects, who'd like to say something.
Thank you, Jane. Just to start off, I'm a director with Boone Brown Architects. I'm a chartered town planner, so I'm not an architect, but I will attempt to advise you on any details of the plans that I can. And there's no apologies due. We are an architectural practice in the main, but I'm a chartered town planner. Chairman, members, this is a full planning application, as you'll be aware, for the erection of 24 affordable homes on a site owned by Somerset County Council. The application before you, I think, mentions passive house. There are aims to achieve passive house. Passive house, to my mind, is, and I think somewhat erroneous in our description, to be honest. Passive house is a trade name, a bit like Hoover that we all refer to and Dyson get very annoyed about. We have used that term, and I don't think we should have done. I think we should have referred perhaps more to an ecological come energy efficient aim within the scheme that we've got before you, and I think that would be more honest, to be fair. And I know that's a comment that's come forward in the Frome Civic Society, and they're absolutely correct. It's simply a case that we are Stonewater, the company that are working away to provide these affordable homes, are aiming to achieve that, and that's a company-wide thing that they're doing across the country. But passive house itself as a term is probably erroneous, frankly. That said, looking very much to try and provide the most efficient and energy efficient buildings that we can provide. In terms of principle, this land is of course allocated in the local plan, and it's not allocated as employment land. And I think that Jane has kind of pointed that out and explained that to some extent. I think members may need to just sort of get a grip on the basic principles of how that works. When there is no 5-year land supply, as there isn't in Mendip at this time, I think we're back at 3.5 years, something to that effect. So when you've got no 5-year land supply and a neighbourhood plan which is more than 2 years old, which I believe yours is at this time, then those 2 factors click in, and whereas the neighbourhood plan would have usually taken precedence, it no longer does. The local plan takes precedence, and that brings us back to the fact the land is not allocated for employment purposes. It is white land, as we used to call it in the old days, and that is land that in principle is acceptable for development within that development area of Frome itself. And in this case, it's, as we stand today in law, in principle, it's acceptable for residential. And that's a principle that it's acceptable for residential. Clearly there's detail here, and you guys will tell us whether you do or don't accept whether this scheme is meeting your requirements, but in principle, it's acceptable as residential. And I think that's an important change to recognise from the last application, where I think Mendip did have a 5-year land supply, and the machinations of town and country planning law were different at that time. Of course, the real planning issue as we see it with this site is whether we have done enough to ensure that there's no clash between the commercial users in Marston Trading Estate and the proposed residents in terms of noise. Our noise consultants tell us that the scheme that we've got designed today will ensure a pleasant living environment for the occupants of that estate, if you like to call it, and will have no bearing on the commercial activities of the adjoining users. We, of course, wait to hear from the council's environmental health guys as well. We need to know whether they agree with us or not. And at that time, we'll get into discussions. Hopefully they'll agree with us and we won't need discussions. But my guess is that we'll have to go through some discussions to try and work out if we've got it right or got it wrong. You'll also know that there are, and this isn't to just say that it makes it okay, but I think we need to recognise that there are numerous examples of commercial and residential living next door to each other in apparent harmony throughout Frome. You'll tell me if that's not a harmony. But I've looked around and I've seen similar situations between Butler's Garden and Portway's Mews with Station Approach, Lees Road with the Vallis Trading Estate, the former highway depot at Little Keyford Lane, and Pinmore and the Grove, of course, on the edge of the Marston Trading Estate, where residential and the commercial falls together, much in a similar pattern as we're proposing today. It's appreciated, to be fair, that the adjacent landowner or adjacent commercial user would like to buy the site, but it's simply not for sale. And the county council want to put affordable housing on it. They see that as something that is more important to them to provide, and that it isn't for sale at this time. Chairman, affordable housing is a priority. In June this year, it was reported that more than 500 households are looking to find affordable housing in Frome, and that demand is likely to increase. I can do no better, perhaps, than to quote from your website, the Town Council's website, where they say, local people are being priced out of the housing market and rental prices are soaring. Frome is becoming a town of two halves. There are those who are comfortably housed and those who are struggling with rising rents, low incomes, and the real possibility of having to leave their hometown to be able to afford a home. The lack of recently built social housing is a huge problem. In short, building new, affordable social housing for local people is a must. We need to do it, and we need to do it soon. And that I note from your website of March this year. And laudable, and no, any of us can disagree with that. Chairman, Frome needs to provide up to 276 social rented homes to meet the current housing need. And again, that's taken from your website of September this year. Currently, 57 of the 414 people on the Homes to Buy register are looking for intermediate shared ownership homes in Frome. At present, I'm only aware of ideas at this time to build 18 affordable homes at North Parade, but no planning application as yet. I understand there are no terms in terms of buying that site or getting that site to come forward at this time. That could take some time. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it could take some time. And of course, we have people needing housing now. Last week, a report to the Mendip Cabinet Committee advised how difficult it is to deliver social housing in Frome, and that if the council do nothing, and that's Mendip Council, and leave it to the market to deliver, then it will take 19 years to deliver the known demand for today, let alone of that of tomorrow. And we're looking at tomorrow, not just into the future. Chairman, it seems to me imperative that this town grabs opportunities to provide affordable housing wherever possible. And I think you guys recognise and understand that. If approved, this scheme will be built by next summer. There'll be 24 homes ready to move in by next summer. Members, this proposal will make a contribution to meeting a significant housing need within the town for this type of accommodation. And I have no doubt that there are 24 households out there that would vote for that. What we're asking you to do tonight is, of course, support those in need and vote in favour of this application. However, I recognise that there may well be detail and concern about the application, and if I can answer any questions, I will aim to do so. I would ask you not to push me too hard on architectural detailing, bearing in mind that's not my profession, but I will do my best because I have been briefed by my colleagues.
Thank you very much. Can I just clarify one thing before I go to questions? Are all 24 houses deemed to be affordable?
Yes, that's
They are.
the intent,
Okay.
yes.
Great, thanks so much.
That's not what it says in the design and access statement.
Some of it's intermediate, but that's affordable as well.
Right. okay.
Yeah.
And there's no mention of it in the description, so I don't know whether you might want to get amended.
That can certainly be changed, but it's being put forward by Stonewater, who are an affordable housing provider. It's entirely 100% affordable. Affordable being the open term, but of course you've got various types of affordable within that. Affordable to rent, social rent, intermediate, and the like. It's all intended for affordable housing.
Thank you.
Question.
Yeah, so questions, I've got Mark first, then Lizzie, and then anyone else, then Paul.
Thank you for that. I'm looking on the application form here, and I get, it's broken down into two sections. You've got residential dwelling units. One is called market housing and one's called, and then what you've talked about is social affordable intermediate rent. So in the social affordable intermediate rent, which is what I think we would expect the council to build, or a housing association acting on the council's land, we've got 8 units, but the 16 other units are called market housing. So what does that mean? Is that built for sale?
No, that is market housing, as in you pay part mortgage and you pay part rent. And the rent is, of course, kept to the social rent level. So in effect, you're getting equity in half of the house. It allows the house to come forward and rise in value as houses do,
seen
and to bring that forward. Yeah.
Before the old gasworks, etc. It's just as it's written here, it looks like 16 out of the 24 are actually for sale, but that's going to be,
That is not.
they're not going for sale on the open market, they will be
They'll go on the open
controlled.
market, no.
Thank you.
That was the reason for my question, actually.
Yeah, I will clarify that for you guys. And yeah,
It should be shown that, yeah.
sorry, did you say 16 were being?
That's what it says on the application, on the application here.
I will get that fixed, but yeah, I can absolutely assure you.
Mark Housing 16, then the bits you were talking about, total 8.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mark. Lizzie.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I had similar concerns about the description of the properties in terms of affordability versus market, and the fact that the application form says 8, and the design statement says 7, and the sustainability statement says 24, and I was just like, so clarity and consistency on that would be brilliant, particularly, you know, I think you'll find, and you've already quoted us saying how important social and affordable housing are to this town. So I think if you can clarify that, that will, you know, help you put the case across much more coherently. My question is around passive house with a capital P. Both the design statement and the sustainability statement say the dwellings will be built to passive house standards and the dwellings are to be built to passive house standards, which sounds pretty comprehensive to me. If it's not passive house, what is it, and how are we supposed to assess it if we don't know what it is?
Yeah, it's, as I was explaining earlier, I don't know if you heard my earlier statement to the council.
I did, but I was looking for a little bit more depth on that.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's not passive house because that passive house is a terminology, or it's a trademark. It is what we would hope to achieve as a category A rating in terms of the environmental standards and energy efficiencies there. To my mind, we probably need to give you a little bit more detail on the actual build standards and qualities that can be put into the houses. And I think we are weak there in our application. I would admit that. But the intention is, and it is as I say, a company-wide intention of Stonewater to provide the highest standard of energy efficient housing that can be produced in this country at this time throughout their sites across the land. I will give you more information on that. I think that deserves a letter and something in writing to give you better, frankly, on that.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. And when you say a category A, do you mean, sorry, an energy performance certificate rating of A?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Paul.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah. I mean, firstly, just to pick up on that point regards passive house, I think Liz probably made clear, passive house isn't just a trade name. It is a quality standard, you know, and to claim passive house and then kind of rein back on that is a huge change, really, because passive house is the highest ecological building standard that we can achieve at the moment. So that was really ambitious, and now obviously it's not going to be quite so ambitious. So that's a great shame. I think that did kind of endear us perhaps a little bit more to the scheme, the idea of passive house, but so we've lost that. So that's a shame.
I wouldn't say lost. I'd say I'm going to do more work to try and convince you on that one, to be fair. And yes, we have been weak.
Okay, well, yeah, we look forward to that. The other thing is your sound consultants, noise consultants, said that the noise from the trading estate has been successfully mitigated, and I'm sure that's absolutely true. However, in doing so, you've created probably unbearable living conditions in the apartments where there's no windows on the north side, I mean, probably people can live with no windows in a bathroom, but no windows in kitchens seems incredible to me. So I think that's probably unacceptable, really, in my opinion. So yeah, I think that's and yeah, that's the one with no windows on the southeast elevation. What was I going to say? Leading on from that, I think. Oh yes, I mean, I'd be interested to know, as a question, if some of this site is going to be social rented and some of it is going to be what is actually called market housing at the moment, but apparently is affordable. Which is which? You know, are all these apartments? Is this the social rented housing? Therefore, the kind of basically the worst properties or the worst accommodation on the site, or is it mixed? Are these some of these market housing? Are you able to answer that?
I'm able to answer that on the basis that there will be negotiations with Mendip's housing team to provide the type of tenure that is required or is demanded at the time of people on the list. So no, it's not an intention to just provide social rent on what you would say is the worst part of the site. That's not the scheme at all. It's about providing the right type of tenure for the right type of tenants that wish to move or are highest up on the list of need.
Right.
So I think you could end up with a mix of social rented in there as much as intermediate, but all within the block, all different units within.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I'm sure you could pick any kind of mix of potential tenants off the list, because there's probably many single people, there's many families, and there's probably many of those are in the gold list. Anyway, just moving on. You mentioned other developments around the town where residential mixes in harmoniously with more industrial uses. As far as I can think off the top of my head, those residential aren't next to what we would term heavy industrial, which this development would be. It would be next to a haulage company with I believe lorry movements 24 hours a day. I don't think there's any residential that's next to that kind of industrial in development. So that does make this quite unique in that sense.
It's always dangerous for me to quote examples, and also in a town that I'm not a resident of. But at the same time, I think what we have to look at is the planning uses. So you might well have planning uses there that are at this time, or users in there that you might find less neighbour friendly, or sorry, more neighbour friendly than the one we've got in terms of our neighbour. But of course, you've got to look at the planning uses. So it's whether it's B1, B2, B8 uses on that site, and whether they would get planning permission for perhaps more noisy events there. But I think you've got some users there that are clearly B8 users. That's what the user is on the adjoining site to the one that we've got. It's simply their working practices And if a new company were to move in, they may well have working practices that would equal, if not be more difficult than the existing neighbour that we have.
It's possible, yeah, depending on what the planning uses are. I can't quote what they are, but yeah, at the moment, yeah, we haven't got that situation as far as I know, and we may not get it if the planning uses don't allow it, obviously. I think that's probably it. Yeah, I mean, I'd also like to see, you know, I regret, and I think we generally regret, you know, although you're absolutely right, we do need more affordable housing in Frome, like everywhere else. We also need more workspace in Frome. So it's a very, very difficult balance to be had here. And obviously this site lends itself much more readily to workspace, even though, as you've rightly said, it's allocated potentially for housing, or the allocation would allow residential. We do regret repeatedly losing workspace in Frome to housing. Thanks.
I think James got a few questions before we...
Yes, or observations at least. Just sort of carrying on from Paul's comment about the lack of windows on that rear elevation. One of the previous refusal reasons was about the excessive scale, height and visual prominence and dominance of the 6 metre high acoustic barrier, which was felt to be harmful to the visual character and appearance of the local area. I appreciate that the acoustic fence has been dropped to 3 metres, but this might just be my opinion, but that blank wall, you know, it isn't, I don't think that will enhance the amenity of the area either. I appreciate it's a compromise potentially between noise impacts and a blank wall. But that's just an observation from my point of view. And secondly, the amenity of the balconies, and I appreciate it would be somebody's personal choice whether they want to sit out on the balcony or not, but I think it also said in the noise report that for the apartment block, that the noise assessment states that it's recommended that the windows to the apartment block are kept generally shut and an alternative means of ventilation is provided to mitigate the noise impacts. So yes, you can do that when you're sitting out in your house, but to my mind, there is still a potential for those people who might be sitting out on their balconies to be disturbed by noise, which obviously would, you know, potentially could compromise the business next door. But we haven't seen the environmental protection officer's response yet. So, but I do think, yes, it'd be lovely to have a balcony, but if people are sitting out on the balcony are then going to complain about the noise, where does that leave us? That's me.
Great, thank you, Jane. Rich.
Just a general comment, really. Thanks for coming. It's been really interesting. You made your case very eloquently. I don't actually have too many objections to the site as it is per se, but I think you're probably picking up, but as a group, we're kind of very frustrated generally, developers and the state of planning in this country at the moment, because we feel
So
we don't have an awful lot of power anymore, you know. So we spent a long time preparing a neighbourhood plan and going, you know, having a vote, and people voted for it and it was adopted, and we find often that it's referred to but overridden. So our comments about employment land are heartfelt, I think, because we did originally want employment land to be in the areas that we'd identified. And I think almost in every single case where we put that, it's gone. You know, it's no longer employment land, or it's about not to be employment land. You know, in every case, virtually, it's been house building instead. And almost in every case, developers have said they'll put X amount of affordable housing in, and after the event, they change their minds and reduce the amount, or we don't get any at all. And that's, I think, where our frustration is coming from. So please don't take it personally. Is a kind of the reputation of developers in general is pretty bad. And we recognise that there's no 5-year land supply, and we recognise that local plan takes precedence. We also know that the local plan is in disarray at the moment as well, you know, and soon to be called Local Plan Part 2, I believe, and that's not going to come out until next year, maybe. So it's a bit of a disaster, really. You know, we feel like we don't have anything to object to. So that's the kind of employment bit. that aside, I think there's some good points being raised, and you know that's what we'll stick to, obviously, about and the passive house. Well, that's a bit of a joke. If you don't mean it, don't put it in. So,
Agree.
you know,
I agree.
trust is what we need.
I
really.
think my architects have got a little bit over the top there, frankly, and I will, yeah, and it's an embarrassment to me. So I will reprimand them accordingly.
John, so you got your hand up.
Yeah, no, my question is just, do we know how many lorry movements per day are already happening next door to this site? It's just a question, because it's difficult for me or anyone to assess the scale of potential disruption to the residents of these potential new homes. You know, and because we want affordable housing, but we don't want crappy affordable housing. We don't want people, it's affordable, but it's, you know, it suffers by noise. So do we have any data on the amount of noise or amount of movement, actually, number of movement?
Yeah.
There is, John. It's all contained within the noise impact assessment. And
sorry, I missed that. I didn't see that.
Yeah, no, it's not the greatest of reads, to be honest.
In terms of interest.
In terms of interest.
Sorry,
yeah.
Factually correct.
And it also looks at the times that those vehicles operate, and some of them are, oh gosh, what happened there? One's gone.
Yeah.
Back. The times that they operate as well, they do have a very early start. You know, obviously that, you know, got some long journeys, so that is all documented, and it's all part of what the environmental protection officer will look at when they assess the report. You know, as we've said here before many times, we are not experts in noise assessments. And yes, I read them, and no, they don't always make a lot of sense. So, you know, I think perhaps to defer to the professional opinion of Mendip's environmental protection officer is probably the best thing to do in this case.
Sure. Okay, John. Any other questions? Any other comments? I mean, thanks for coming, John. It's a pleasure. As Rick said, you know, put your case very, very well. Personally, I'm very passionate about affordable housing, and I think, as most of the councillors here are, and we want to see as much as we possibly can. I'd love to hear a bit more about the breakdown of the 24 in terms of what's affordable, what's going for social rent, and how that is broken down. As Rich said, we see this so often where we're getting 30% affordable housing, and then when the Section 106 or reserve matters comes in, oh well, because we didn't get that, we didn't get this, we didn't get that, it's down to 18 or 15. And
I think we need to recognise that the applicants in this instance are an affordable housing provider.
Sure,
they're not.
Fully appreciate that. Yeah,
that is their game. That's what they do. They get grant to achieve that, not for anything else.
Yeah, I fully appreciate that, and I'm really looking at sort of how can we make it happen. I do have issues with the big wall. I do have issues with the lack of windows as well, and I don't know if that's something that could be built in and still maintain the noise. Acoustics sort of standards that obviously it's working to at the moment. I don't know if that's possible or not. I mean, that's something that I sort of, but apart from that, that's probably the only real issues I have with it. Jane had a couple of comments and a couple of thoughts about how we go forward. Do you want to see what councillors think?
I mean, I think there are a few things that just need to be clarified. Really.
I hope I've got a list of,
I think the design and access statement needs to be perhaps amended so that it doesn't just say 30% affordable and then the rest market housing. If you can just set out clearly what you've explained to us, I think that'd be helpful.
I know exactly what's happened there. Just cut and paste, it's gone. Don't worry, I'll be,
and then obviously, as we've discussed about the sustainability standards, to provide more information about those, a bit more clarity there. And perhaps once that's been done, we'll get reconsulted by Mendip, and we can take another look at that information in more detail, And hopefully by then as well, we'll have the environmental protection officer's comments. So I think what I'm trying to say is probably the best thing is you've heard what we've had to say. We won't make a formal comment at this stage, but if you could take those things away, including our concerns about lack of windows and that blank elevation, and then we'll reconsider it when it comes back to us.
That's absolutely fine.
Does that make sense? I mean, I think we would like to propose to accept, but we need a bit more information in order to do that. We don't want to just reject. No, I get that. We want to, and it's great that you've come here, and it's great that we're having these discussions. And if you want to come back or you want to arrange a meeting outside, then Jane and I, and I'm sure Paul Horton would, or any other councillors would be delighted to do that as well, to go through stuff, and hopefully sort of come to a consensus and come to a landing.
Could we do that outside of a meeting? Like sometimes we'll do an email round and people sign up to something, you know, if you send us.
Jane's got deferred authority.
I have, but I think depending on the amount of the amendments that are resubmitted as formal documents back to amend it, they might do a reconsultation.
Okay.
And if that's the case, then it will go back on our list. But absolutely, if there are any discussions that you want to have outside of the meetings, then we'd be happy to take that forward, assuming that all other councillors on the call are happy with that as a way forward.
Yeah, it's quite hard to object to affordable housing.
Absolutely.
It is, but you guys are getting it right. But it has to be right.
Well,
these are not second-grade people, so then it's not second-grade housing, and that very much is what we as architects and indeed Stonewater want to ensure, that it's good enough for everybody.
And we have seen that in the past on developments where, you know, we say we're getting 30% affordable housing, and when you look at the plan, it's in the far corner next to the railway line or the main road or whatever, and you know that's not right.
That's often on a larger market scheme, because the quiet end sells for higher.
Absolutely, we know exactly why, but it's not right. So I don't like deferring things, but I think in this instance, if everyone is in agreement, I'm going to propose that we defer and have further discussions and get some further information, and maybe wait to the environmental health officer as commented as well. So that's my proposal. If someone wants to second that, we can take it back. Thank you, Mark. We'll vote on that.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. It's always great to listen.
So, next up for discussion is number 657 on our list. Land at Paxdale Way. It's an application for hedgerow removal to allow access for modern machinery. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Bear with me 1 second. So, this is the area of hedgerow in question, and a hedgerow application is similar in some respects to a conservation area tree or TPO application, in as much as it has to be tested against some certain criteria to see whether or not it needs to be protected. Might just about be able to see those criteria on the screen there. I know that I sent them all to you previously. And literally the application consists of, sorry, I didn't put the site, but it's literally a site plan with a red line. And the reason is to allow access for modern machinery. So we did.
So it's practically that rectangle in the middle, isn't it?
It is,
So we did visit the site, and
it's a lovely day.
It was a lovely day. Thank you, Steve. And so the hedgerow that you can see is just follows around here. There are lots and lots of objections online. I think probably one of the most significant against the criteria is that the field layout is part of a historic strip farming, and that would relate to the bit that says it marks, just bear with me, the boundary of an estate or a manor, or no, not that one, is part of a field system. Or looks to be related to any building or other feature associated with the field system. So, I mean, I think the fact that we've seen applications here before, and there's been a lot of talk about strip farming, its history and its importance. So I certainly think that that's something that must be taken into consideration. And then obviously, you know, there are all the other issues about the impact that it will have on the wildlife, the biodiversity. And actually, you know, just to say to allow access to modern machinery, it's not really clear why that's necessary. There's no reasoning for it. And not being a farmer or an expert in heavy machinery, but it does appear that there is access through here from the entrance off of
Cuckoo Lane.
Yeah.
And at the top, wasn't there?
Yeah, and also that there was clearly machinery had come through along this path when we walked along there, and then you can just see another access track down here, which again looks to be suitable for heavy machinery. So you know, I think there are strong grounds for objection, but over to you to discuss.
Thank you, Jane. Who's first? I've got Rich, then Mark, then John, and I think we're all going to say the same. Go on.
Okay, we're all going to say the same thing.
Object, you know, but there are ways that this could be done much better. I do believe that it's under the Wildlife Countryside Act. He could take out, if he wants to widen his access, he could do that. He's perfectly able to do that by taking out a small section of the hedge. He doesn't even need planning permission to do that. So he could certainly get his heavy machinery in. Don't see anything about any bat surveys or wildlife surveys. 500 metres is quite a lot, isn't it? Also, being on the positive side, there's this new elms farming agricultural grants about to happen, and hedgerows are part of that. I can't remember which part of the elms it's going to be, but they are about to happen. He could apply for money. He could be given money to keep those hedgerows as they are. So he could get access by taking a little bit of hedge out, and he could get some money for keeping the hedges, which might actually be more money than he'd make by taking them out. I just think he hasn't thought about it.
Yeah. Thanks, Rich. You agree? Mark?
Yeah, I object to. I've known this area for at least since 1970 when we moved to the top of the hill there. It's always been managed as farmland. The applicant has already put in, you can't see them on the photograph that Jane displayed, but he's already put roadways in and fenced off. Yeah. And the access for walkers is restricted now, which isn't a bad thing because it means he can farm the land without detriment of dog feces and all the other stuff that you normally get running around there. So he already has taken steps to make it more manageable as a land there. I was very pleased when he took the land on because it meant that we didn't have that industrial sized brewery cidery with 100 traffic movements a day at the bottom of the hill there. So I'm a bit disappointed that he's applied for this, but no, I agree. I know the people who've objected in writing, and I would lend my support to what David Chesterfield and others have said.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Mark. I think John first and then Paul.
Yeah, no, I agree with what has been said, so I won't repeat it. But he took this land on, knowing what was there, and the fact he wants to remove it is sort of like in a microcosm what has happened in so many different places, just to make it more efficient for a machine. So I definitely would object.
Thank you, John. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was probably going to say something similar to what John just said. I mean, it's not, I don't think, I mean, I guess we all know it's not really about access to the field that he wants. He just wants to make it easier to maneuver heavy machinery around. You know, the less hedgerows, you know, it's much easier to manage the land, obviously. It's not just about access into the field. So yeah, I object along similar lines, really.
Great, thank you. Sheila?
I just wanted to say that you can see, not on his little sketch, but on the photograph that you had, that sort of heritage layout is very clear all the way along that slope. And so, yeah, that was it, Jane. Back one. That one. You can see it continues over, into the other field. It's very clearly part of the landscape, and I think it would be wrong to just rip it up for a bit of machinery. Do we know what he wants to do there? Is it just cutting?
Probably wants to build houses if there's no hedges to get in the way. Sorry, it's cynical me.
Any other questions? I'm just looking. No other comments. So I think we are pretty clear we're objecting, but
I think we're quite clearly objecting, yes. On the grounds that of the impact that it would have on the heritage, the strip farming of the area, the environmental impacts, and the impacts on wildlife, more specifically. Richard's comment about the fact that you could widen the access by taking out a much smaller section of the hedgerow. You don't need to take out all of the hedge, and make reference to the elms funding that is available, which would be a good option for the farmer.
oh, sorry, I was.
I just wonder whether it's worth putting in there. I mean, as Rich said, there doesn't seem to have been any surveys or anything done of the wildlife in the hedgerow either. So it's inadequate as an application as it is anyway, I think.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think they're required to put in those surveys as part of a hedgerow application. But I think what it has to be considered against those criteria. So I would expect that surveys would be asked for.
I would imagine that there's some historical records there when Lily's tried to put their factory there. They would have had to do that sort of thing. So there's probably quite a lot of evidence out there. And the field next to it has been tried to be built on a few times. So I'm guessing that there's already empirical evidence there that he could draw on. I was just thinking as well, something else he could draw on is FWAG, Farming Wildlife Advisory Group. I mean, they're the kind of people he needs to talk to because they've got access to all these grants and they know how to apply for them if he can't do it himself. I'm absolutely sure he'd make more money keeping the hedge than he would destroying it.
Taking it out. Takes some break.
Just, it's more fiddly for somebody who's not used to writing applications, isn't it? So if that WAG group can help, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay, so if I put an objection together on those grounds.
Yep, that sounds good. Someone propose that, please. Thank you, Rich. Someone second. Thank you, Sheila. All those in favour?
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Keep looking to Alex, thinking she'll phone. If you want.
Okay, so next up for discussion on the list is number 661, and it's 6 Meadow Road, Frome. And the description is for the construction of a new first floor extension, which I felt was a little bit misleading because it's actually adding an additional story to the bungalow. So number 6 is actually in a cul-de-sac of 9 other bungalows. And I can't remember whether I've actually done a picture of this one, so just bear with me.
I sent one out earlier on.
Yeah.
In the corner there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, I did. Get that. Just one moment.
That's a big bungalow.
It's
Okay, so from you can see on Street View, it's actually this bungalow at the end.
It's actually tucked in the right in the corner.
Yeah.
yeah, it's behind that one, isn't it?
It's behind that one, which is why I went
So-
down and took a photograph this morning.
Tucked in there. And clearly the entire cul-de-sac are bungalows, and a lot of the surrounding houses are that right? Houses are bungalows? That might not make sense.
Properties.
Dwellings are bungalows as well. And then just, I know that you've all looked at them, but obviously these are the existing elevations and these are proposed. I think that the concern that I picked up was these windows along here, which appears to have a Juliet balcony. And it's but even on site, it was quite difficult to tell whether there would be any significant overlooking of the adjoining properties, because the houses behind, not within the cul-de-sac, the land actually slopes down as well. So there's quite a significant height difference. And it was whether or not whether the overlooking was a concern, and actually whether you felt there would be quite an impact on the street scene because of the varying levels, and particularly the fact that you would have a bungalow going up effectively with another story.
Yeah, that's where we are.
So yes, over to you to discuss.
It does slope down quite considerably, doesn't it?
It does.
Because when you first look at the street scene, you think, oh, that's going to stick out like a sore thumb. But when you're actually there,
No, it is tucked away in the corner.
yeah, it does.
And below that is the road.
There's a road behind, isn't it?
It's
So
Lays Lane. So
yeah.
you don't actually look down on that. Sorry if I'm going to speak.
Carry on.
It looks to me like you've got a bungalow and they put another bungalow on top in design. It's a whole replicating the ground floor of a bungalow with another one on top. And the windows here will naturally overlook this property here. And so, I have no objections to somebody wanting to extend their house, but it's a bit misleading to say it's an extension. It's doubling the size of the thing. And it's building a house out of a bungalow, really. And whether or not that's a problem, I don't know, but it does seem, it's not just putting rooms in the roof.
No.
Which is what a lot of people do with bungalows and make it a dormer. It's, it is plonking another one on top of that.
Indeed. Okay, thank you, Mark. I've got John first.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have major objections per se, but I think we need to get it right, because my understanding is that bungalows are becoming the very popular choice for people who can't find the kind of accommodation or house they want in Frome, because they got nice plots, they get good value, and then they can build them up. And I see no problem with that, because a lot of the bungalows are so tiny. But I think it's the problem with, do the neighbors actually understand what has been proposed and whether they're going to be overlooked or not? That would be my question.
Thanks, John. Any other comments from anybody? Paul?
I'll just make a quick comment. I mean, it's interesting what John just said. I think it is actually quite difficult to understand from the drawings exactly what's being proposed, and and for one of the the neighbours, I think they may well struggle. So that might be a reason why nobody's made any objections. I mean, I wouldn't object to this from my own point of view unless a neighbour was objecting. And obviously they're not objecting at the moment, but it might just be that they're not really understanding the drawings, I guess.
Yeah.
But if it's presumably, I mean, I haven't visited, but when you say the land dips down, presumably the existing bungalow is actually on a slightly lower level than the surrounding bungalows, is it?
Yeah, that's right.
Right, so it's not going to be sticking up a full story above the other bungalows. It's only going to be, half a story or whatever,
Yeah.
So I don't think it would be a problem as far as the streetscapes. In fact, I don't see a problem with mixing, two-story houses with bungalows anyway. But yeah, so I don't think it's a problem unless it's overlooking neighbours, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. Anybody else?
No, my only comment was that if the neighbours are happy with the overlooking.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what Paul just said. Exactly. If the neighbours are happy, then they're happy. And, yeah, why not? What have we got them, Jen? We're sort of not objecting, are we?
No, we're not quite. So I think what we're saying is no objection in principle.
Yeah.
However, we are concerned about the potential overlooking from the left side elevation. I don't think we'll add anything if we say, so if there's no objections from the neighbours, then it's fine. You know, I think the planning officer will make the assessment.
Which is the left side you're talking about, Jane?
Oh, it's described as left side on the elevation.
Is it that one?
Yes, I think it is.
So I don't think there's too much overlooking there, but this one will look over them.
Yeah.
Which looks like right if you're looking at the front of it, doesn't it?
I could put overlooking, yeah.
Full stop.
I mean, I can say overlooking full stop. I just added that in because on the drawing you can, it's just titled left side elevation viewed from front, which is the one that shows the bank of windows there. But I can just leave it at
I think that's
potential overlooking. Yeah.
So I was just going to say, it does appear, looking at the plan, what am I looking at? Floor, ground floor, existing, proposed. Oh, hang on. Well, the first floor proposed, there's a window on in the bedroom. I can't really describe where it is, but it's angled away from the other end, if you like. It appears to be angled in a way to avoid overlooking in some sense. It looks like the architect has kind of, or whoever designed it, has actually thought about that. So, but I think it's reasonable, as Jane says, to leave that to the planning officer to check out.
Yeah, you went on mute a bit then, but I think we got the gist of what you said.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Sorry, Hannah, I think John and I have lost sound again.
Oh, I lost sound as well. Okay, we're back.
But I don't think we can hear the main room.
Just
oh, there you go.
out. We're just getting you back.
Okay, good.
Can you hear us now?
Oh, there we are.
Back.
That's it.
So,
Did we vote? Did we vote on that?
Rich proposed, Mark seconded, and then we just needed the vote at the end.
Oh, can we?
And actually on the website.
Great. Thank you.
It was John with his finger in his ear. Okay, so I haven't actually highlighted any others specifically for discussion on the list, unless there are any that the councillors would like to discuss.
Would it be not? Great.
In which case then are we happy for all of the others to send sort of standard no objection responses to those?
I think so. Someone could propose that, please. Thank you, Mark. Seconded by Sheila. All those in favour of that?
And that's unanimous as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. The day of the next meeting is, Hannah?
7th of October.
7th of October.
Okay.
Usual. And
Into October already.
into October already, yeah. Let's go back soon. And thank you very much.